Hello. Sorry to anyone that was waiting. I hope this is working now. This is Camille, and I'm on with Jeff C., the most censored channel on YouTube. And I can speak from experience. I've been watching him get pulled down over and over again. Jeff, are you there still?
Yes, I am. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks.
Yay.
Still alive and kicking. Still censored though.
Yeah, what you gonna do? You talk
By the
about
way, you are coming in. It appears. I'm just gonna. Yeah, you're coming in, so it's all good. Just in case you weren't.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. So we're here to talk about all the craziness happening in food these days. Well, some of it, the stuff
Mhm.
that we've seen. So I know I saw your little Winnie the Pooh Bear update to your people on Twitter. You want talking about Monsanto and Bayer. What was it that you wanted to talk about there?
Oh no, I wasn't sure exactly where you were going to take the conversation, so I just put a few hashtags in there. Monsanto obviously now owned by Bayer. So, and there's lots of news dealing with that. There's a Monsanto. Bayer is always in the news because it's so controversial. And there's just this push around the world to regulate and allow genetically modified foods to basically be sold over the counter to people that probably have no idea what they're eating. So it's quite crazy what's going on because as the title of your live show here is "You Are What You Eat." I mean, yeah, you pretty much are. So what are you eating?
Exactly. And can we even know what we're possibly eating? I sometimes look at the monster that GMOs, what that is, and how it's been portrayed and how people get very upset about it. And it's so convenient that this new type of modification that they have using things like CRISPR and other gene editing technologies, how now you don't even have to know. They can make seeds look like heritage seeds, and there's no markers. They say, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but they say there's no way to tell. They can take what would have taken generations before of breeding conventionally to accomplish their their new franken foods, but they're not multiple life forms put together, the transgenic mutation. They're just tinkering with what makes that whatever it is, whether it's an animal or a plant. And you
Yeah,
don't
and
even have to know.
there's a lot of propaganda. They're trying to change the image of genetically modified. So this is what I've noticed. Over the past certainly past year or so. Bayer has spent a lot of money trying to clean up. They're releasing something like 1,200 employees, or I don't even know if it's more than that. There's just a lot of pro GMO sort of propaganda that has been pushed on all different platforms, social media platforms, and of course with the CRISPR now we have the CRISPR babies coming out of China, something that a lot of people have been asking me to cover. I haven't had a chance to, but I've definitely been keeping a tab on it. And yeah, it's pretty disturbing because, as you said, now how are we even going to know? Because the seeds look the same, and I guess with the regulation loopholes that they have, they don't, unless the government somehow, I guess in the United States, the FDA. It's the revolving door, right? I mean, the
Oh yeah.
Monsanto and the Food and Drug Administration is a joke. I mean, it's one and the same. So you might as well think of Bayer as your Food and Drug Administration now. And Monsanto going back for years and years. I mean, I've covered Monsanto ever since I started doing this type of work way back in 2012. And you know, it's maybe you might be hesitant to throw the label the most evil corporation in human history, but I just don't know how anyone could really top Monsanto when we think of Agent Orange, DDT, and all these chemicals that they've created that are in every single one of us, and every single life form on the planet has these Monsanto chemicals in them forevermore. And it's really just the tip of the iceberg when you think about it, because with the CRISPR babies, you have designer babies now With the frankenfoods, we have massive pushes. I mean, here in Canada, the big thing or the big story over the past year dealing with genetically modified organisms is the frankenfish, particularly the salmon that they have been growing. And this is a special type of salmon that has been genetically modified to grow at twice the speed or twice the size. I mean, it even looks more than twice the size. It looks like 3 or 4 times the size when you see some of the photos of the comparisons. To grow as much larger and much quicker than before. And they're growing these fish in labs, and this is already legal. It's already being sold, and people are already consuming this stuff. So it's a brave new world in many ways, and I think we're on the precipice of God knows what. It's quite scary.
Yeah. And on the CRISPR babies thing, I would be shocked if those were the first CRISPR babies.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
just like
But
Dolly being the first clone. I mean, really, is that's the one that they give us? But
yeah.
you
And
know,
and on the clone thing and on the not knowing what we're eating, I'm gonna share my screen
Mhm.
because I know I mentioned this in my presentation, if anybody's seen that or the video that I have on here, the about the importance of knowing your farmer, but that cloning food or animal clones, you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That cloned animals have been, at least in the United States, allowed to be sold or their offspring into the food system since 2008, and that's proved. That's just when they gave them the ruling. I've read articles talking with farmers, and they're saying how it was just the Wild West before that. They could do whatever they wanted to do, and this was just the ruling, kind of, I don't know, to take the lid off of everything. It seems like they give themselves these rules and then they're allowed to go hog wild. Like right now, the conversation going on is on what can be called meat, what can be called milk, and they're talking about how, oh, your almond milk can't be called milk, or they don't want it to be able to be called milk. And but really, I think it's more they're talking about the brewed milk that's the chemical equivalent to milk that they can make with modified yeast cells. Like there are different companies, but the one that actually sparked it off for me, that got me even looking into most of this a year or two ago, was Perfect Day Foods. They talked about how they wanted to get their milk in other products as an ingredient. They weren't just going for what was in the dairy case. They wanted to be in your cookies. They want to be that ingredient. And would you know? I don't know. I never realized that you could be eating clones until Jules, which I know I mentioned Jules on your show. So everyone knows that's Jules from UCY.TV. You can look her up on YouTube. Her show was Before the First Cup with Jules. You have to go to her playlist. You have to see the stuff that she's been covering for years. She retired in June, or at least so far she's retired. And it's scary. It's so scary, this what they don't have to tell us and what they just do. I honestly, I go to the store now and it's, what am I going to buy?
Yeah, yeah. I think that you gotta, you can't just focus entirely on GMOs. You got to look back at the Food and Drug Administration. You got to look back at the food corporations, the giant food corporations, the ones that are producing a lot of the dairy and a lot of our meats and stuff, and see how closely they have been involved with the government and being able to push this type of food. And it's interesting mentioning milk because it is kind of bizarre that human beings drink so much cow milk because it's like it's why like yeah, it tastes good, it's nutritious, well, yes, but ultimately milk is something that is part of the development of a baby sort of thing, whether it be a human or a cow or something. Um, but we have been conditioned into this mindset that, yeah, that's a totally normal part of every diet. So that, dairy is a huge, huge portion of the average sort of American diet. And it's like people don't even stop to think, well, why are you drinking that? It's like when I see people drinking sports drinks, it's like most people that I see drinking the sports drinks aren't even doing sports. Like, why are they drinking these things? Like, don't they think for a moment? Like, what is it that you're taking into your body? Why are you taking this stuff into your body? And I think that maybe because like when we think about it, like we don't know. We don't know. The scientists don't even know. So many people that are involved with this. Really, the jury is out on so much of how these foods affect us, and for the most part it's pretty negative from what you can see from the slices that leak out, sort of thing. But we have been conditioned into a certain sort of mindset, a certain sort of diet that for the most part you just subtract the GMOs, is not really healthy. The average person eats way too many carbohydrates. You know, the average person is taking so much high fructose corn sugar into their system. And this is all, a lot of it could be about marketing, right? But it also reflects these food giant corporations and how, you can go back and you can say like the Ford food groups and stuff, what they would show to kids in school and how you need to have equal amounts and stuff like that. Well, that had a lot to do with the major food corporations.
Oh yeah.
It's not necessarily what's actually even good for you. In fact, a lot of this stuff you could cut out of your diet and live and be a lot healthier. And ultimately, what I would say is that what all human beings should be striving for is eliminating the middlemen in your food supply, like knowing what food, like either growing your own food, so that you know exactly where it comes from, or knowing your local farmers and doing trade directly with them so that you know exactly what is in the foods and what you're providing for your family. And that is what has been eradicated. We're so far removed from what we consume. We have no, and just to throw this in as a little I mention this a lot because I think it's a really positive story about genetically modified foods, or not, maybe not genetically modified foods, but fast foods, bad foods. And I mention it a lot that Bolivia, McDonald's spent, I don't know, like $1 billion or more trying to, set up all these locations within the Bolivian sort of country and try to, export their brand to this particular country. And in Bolivia, the people are so, like, food is such a huge part of their culture. The whole preparation of food is all part of what a daily sort of life in for a Bolivian person is. So that what happened was McDonald's was completely rejected. Like nobody was going to these restaurants, and it was because the people had the right mindset about their food, that it is a part of what they are. They are what they eat. It's part of their culture. And so I use that as an example of how we can, because we're, like, oh, let's raise awareness for cancer. Well, where are all these cancers coming from? My suspicion is the bulk of what the cancers that people are receiving are from the foods,
Well,
as you are what you eat. So we should we
cells are
should
remaking themselves all the time. So if you're giving them garbage,
exactly. If you are what you eat, so if you're eating this fast food all the time, it's wreaking havoc on your system, and it likely is, triggering a lot of these bad chemicals in your system. So, I think that is like the bigger sort of thing is trying to get people to reinvest in wholesome eating and wholesome foods, and knowing where their foods come from and having a real connection to it, like a real, like, I know farmer Bob or farmer Joe or Mary down the street, that's where I get my strawberries. That's you can talk to the person. They can tell you what seeds they're using. Like that is the type of thing that has been eradicated over the past, 100 years or so, with the sort of massive agriculture corporations and how they have completely taken over. And yeah, it's a scary thing because now genetically modified foods are in the market, and we have really very little knowledge on how these things are going to impact us long term.
Absolutely. I mean, when you were saying before about the milk, I don't know, but I wonder historically, because there's different preparation methods and things for fermenting, like kefir and making cheeses and yogurts and other ways to make the things last longer without refrigeration, that those are supposed to be, or supposedly, the old world ways of doing things. And in I would wonder what people would be eating in the wintertime when their produce isn't like their plants aren't growing and they can't go out and harvest, if they live in a snowy area, if that's why people maybe ate meat and dairy and things that they could keep
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you've always had, every year, you'd have the harvest and then you'd have the winter. I mean, if you're in the more northern climates, and you would have to be able to
Are you
preserve
still there?
food. Yeah,
There
can
you
you
are.
hear me?
Yeah, it went out for just a second on my end.
Yeah, yeah. The whole preservation of foods is where we get things like sausages and cheeses and stuff like that, because it's all about having foods that would last throughout the winters, sort of thing. So that is a very and yeah, processed meats is a whole nother kettle of fish that you could dive into and talk about, the carcinogens and nitrates and stuff, especially in the current day sort of processed foods. But yeah, I mean the whole culture of food, preserving food and having, like uh, cheeses and stuff like that, it all ties into just human beings, civilizations, surviving through winters and stuff like that. So learning how to preserve foods, learning how to make foods that won't go bad or that you can store for longer periods, sort of thing. And what you'll see too with the genetically modified, like what I've seen a lot, I'm sure you've noticed this, is they try to make it sound like genetically modified foods have been around ever since the first farmers, like the first, go back 10,000 years or so, to the early sort of agrarian communities or villages and stuff like that, where people stopped hunting, gathering, and started staying in one position. And they say, well, you would, farmers would in those days take the most desirable sort of strains of wheat and stuff and breed them together and cross pollinate and stuff like that. And then they try to justify that by saying, well, look, we've always been doing this. We're just doing it now at a molecular level, sort of thing. So that's
It's different life forms for the regular GMOs. That's isn't the big one that people say, the fish in the tomatoes sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were doing that for a long time. But no, I have heard that argument. And they definitely make that for CRISPR.
Yeah, exactly. They want, because that's the whole thing. Public opinion is huge, and that's one of the reasons why genetically modified labeling has been so strongly resisted. It's all the major corporations for years and years have been showing how, it's Coca-Cola, it's PepsiCo, it's Kraft, it's all these major sort of food producers that spend millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on a yearly basis to prevent the labeling of their foods. And it's like, well, at the same time, they're trying to tell us that, hey, there's nothing wrong with our foods. In fact, they're better and safer than they have ever been. Well, then why, and they were like, oh, we don't want the stigma that is out there. And this is why they're coming up with new ideas for labels. They're saying like bioengineering and stuff. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's like their ways of circumnavigating the genetically modified sort of specter or stigma that they would claim exist, in the minds of quote unquote conspiracy theorists, sort of thing.
And then I wonder how much of it is the whole, this is step 1, 2, 3, to get us like the Fabian slow play, the nibble away at your enemy sort of thing. And how much of this is, well, they're really going to hate this. So then they'll be more accepting of this. They won't even know, but it's not GMO, and they've demonized GMO so great in our minds. Not that it's a good thing. Absolutely not. I love the non-GMO, the project non-GMO or whatever it's called, but there's nothing on there about what they're spraying on the food.
Yeah, because the pesticides, the herbicides, you know, like that are sprayed on a lot of organic crops are something, because then you're, you know, you might switch to organic and think, wow, this is clean, safe food. But no, not necessarily. There's a lot of chemicals that are being used. And this is, you know, this is part of the whole thing. I mean, we've lost, you know, where you know, go back to, say, you know, the 20th century, the beginning, turn of the 20th, 1900 or so, you know, at least half the population at that point in time were farmers. And now it's about what, 2% of the population or less that you know, would claim agriculture as their occupation, sort of thing. So like they've crushed the mom and pop farmers, much like they've crushed the mom and pop sort of restaurants in most suburban sort of settings, because you know, you get the massive corporations with their fast food coming in. So this is all the disconnect, and this is why I mentioned Bolivia, because it's like we should all endeavor to be as connected as possible, because really, at the end of the day, you know, you could say water, you know, number one maybe, and then food number two, in terms of what is the most important thing in anyone's life. I mean, you can't live, and you need shelter, you know. There's certain things that you just cannot go without. So food is something that you should take extremely seriously. And if you look at people, like a good example would be athletes. If you look at like world-class athletes, they are very concerned about everything that they put in their body. Like they tend to be a little bit more knowledge, or often a lot more knowledgeable about these things, because they understand how much it affects their performance. So I think that in many ways, we have all been dumbed down into the Homer Simpson type, you know, is it edible? I'll eat it. You know, does it taste good? Is there a commercial for it? Is there a jingle that I have in my head? I'm going to buy that product, sort of thing, without thinking, well, this is way more than just, it's not like a, you know, like an average product that maybe that you could buy, even like a piece of electronics or something like that. You can choose to use it or not. When it's food, it's actually becoming part of your body. It's, I mean, it's going to affect you in like nothing else really can. So it is so important for you know, people to change their mindset about what they consume, what they eat, and where it comes from. I think this is why they've been so successful in really turning our foods into something so toxic right before our eyes, because it is just, they programmed people through their you know, television and everything else, into the Homer Simpson type mentality, where it's just, you know, where people are apathetic. They just want something cheap. They want something that, you know, they can you know, open quickly and, you know, start to chew down. They don't want to think. And then when I say to folks, and I say this a lot, they say, you know, like, what do you eat? You're like, you know, you go to hang out with your buddies, or you're at a party or something. People are eating chips, for instance. It's like Doritos or something. You ever stop to take a look what's on the ingredients
Oh
on
my
the back of Frito Lay? I mean, if you don't know what those things are, if you can't pronounce them, there's a good chance that you probably should not be eating those things, you know. But alas, you know, that's the programming is strong.
The programming's really strong. And on the Homer Simpson note, I got that book, that The Day of the Locust. I haven't got to read it yet,
Oh,
but I got a copy. But yeah, it it's such a big issue in my mind that I don't know that people can just be looking out for number one on what to buy, and I'm eating well, because it's all been contaminated. It's all been, even in the heritage seeds land. I mean, with CRISPR, how do we know? Someone could call themselves heritage and they could sell their seeds, and then you plant them and you think you're doing well, but they have been tinkered with. We don't know. We don't know the cloned meats. We don't know, because I mean, unless farmers are bringing in a bull, they're probably just calling the vet. And I know that doctors get bonuses when they give all the vaccinations to their
yeah.
patients and everything. That's a thing. I wonder if the vets get a bonus for when they get that special sauce in the cow. I don't to pollute the whole stream. I don't know. I'm just guessing because I didn't realize how involved in this in the whole technology takeover of food the veterinary world was. I didn't even consider that until I was looking at it further because with the growing of uh, the cellular agriculture, the petri dish meat. There's a lot, vets are involved in this stuff a lot. Not like your regular large animal vet, but people that go to veterinary school end up in this world of
Yeah.
the new foods. But
There's also, there would be a lot of conditioning that you get through the education system, which really should be called something else. The programming system. A lot of people are being programmed into thinking, you know what, like, because like one of the big misconceptions or one of the big lies that is pushed about genetically modified is that it's greater yields, and it never really is. It's never really greater yields that genetically modified foods are producing. That's total nonsense. And then even when you say, okay, look at the genetically modified salmon, for instance, that they're selling in Canada, and that they're creating all these farms now, and it's really disturbing. It's like, well, they're able to produce more food. So what you'll have is these characters, these conservative curmudgeon type characters, that'll come forth and say, well, what are you complaining about? I mean, it's food. We're feeding people, like, how do you expect to feed, 7, 8 billion, 10 billion people, whatever, however many people are going to be in the world in the near future, if you don't, start to tinker with things at a genetic level, sort of thing. If you don't start to modify these foods, and hey, we've been doing it for so long, and the earliest farmers were doing it, they just didn't have the labs that we do, and hey, it only makes sense, right? And so it the end justifies the means, or the way they sell it, right? And it's it's like,
yeah,
so you get that type of like, you'll get those skeptics, because like you have skeptics on all sides, but you'll get the skeptics of the GMO critics that come out and say, well, wait a second, we don't know what this stuff is. I apologize for the phone ringing in the background, but there you go.
yeah, because we don't know. They've been messing with all of these cultures around the world for so long with the USAID, dropping bags of beans or rice or whatever they're taking places. I mean, how did these people survive before all of this help? How did these these nationalities or whatever, how could they be there if no one was feeding them, you know?
Well, that's it too. I mean, it's like we don't feed ourselves anymore. That whole disconnect. And this is something that, you could really, I mean, it would be a really interesting sort of examination, historical sort of examination, to see how different things are. I mean, I'm not saying, like, look, I know things were tough and people starved a lot more in the past, and there were famines and droughts and all these things that would cause just devastation. Um, and yes, okay, we have to use technology because it's a double-edged sword. So, if we can use technology to improve and produce more foods and make it easier and stuff like that, well, that benefits humanity. So yeah, you can understand some of those things, but it seems to me, and from all the work that I've been doing for so long, that really they're not, like the propaganda that's put out, like with the CRISPR babies. I've seen a lot of propaganda, like where they're saying, you know what, it's amazing because now you'll be able to eliminate AIDS, and you'll be able to eliminate these hereditary sort of diseases that would cause all kinds of suffering and all that.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's Pandora's box. I mean, once you open that, where does it end and what does it lead to? And it's like, well, not only does it lead to a whole new species, because I mean, literally, what you'll get is an entirely different species. Because then people are like, well, I want my kid to be really smart and really strong and athletic, and and then you just start, and there's no end to it where it ends up. So you could say the same thing with the foods that where what does it become? And I've seen like some of your videos recently that are really shocking, like these petri dish type, fake meats that they're producing. And it's like, what is that? And how long before that's in a taco? Would people even know what they
That's
and there's
yeah.
no you
Would
you
you know?
you eat fish, it's like, look at the fish that most people eat. It's like breaded fish, and it's got all this batter and stuff and all that. Well, you're already so many steps removed from what the actual, organism once was. And how easy is it for them to just, put their synthetic meats or whatever their genetically modified sort of lab grown meats in there and just put enough of the salts and chemicals to mask it so people wouldn't really know the difference. I think we're facing a
Yeah,
future where people just and they're going to make people apathetic. That's what I say about the Homer Simpson sort of attitude is to engineer a sort of apathy amongst the public. Like, oh, who cares? We're all going to die, or you get that a
they're
lot.
definitely they're banking on people not caring what they eat now. So as long as it tastes good and they feel good, then that's because these foods, sure, maybe they can make you feel good if they're made to do that, make you feel good, not be healthy, not be well. You're talking about seafood, and I have to show you something.
Yeah.
Would people even know? This is just one example of plant-based meat, well, plant-based seafood. Seafood's really easier to do. They say they can grow it at room temperature. See these? Look at these. I mean, shrimps and scallops, and it's plant-based. I'm pretty sure these people are pea protein, just like the Beyond Burgers and lots of dairy or fake dairy products and
Well, yeah, it's kind of like tofu, right? Too. It's like, what is it? Well, it tastes like this. You can, I think they put a lot of money into the whole chemical sort of the tasting, right? Like that is a huge part of it. Can we make it taste a certain way? And if
yep.
the answer is yes, then you can fool people because if it tastes like chicken, then people will think, well, it's chicken. It tastes like chicken, right?
Oh,
Um,
and the companies, the big multinationals, they're always looking to save a buck, I'm sure. And if they can do this not just in the less expensive, they're also pushing the other video I did on the salmonella, how all these food recalls, it's not safe. It's not safe to keep doing food this way. How long until they're just going to have to decide to do things in a safer way, whether it's vertical farming where they can be sure there's going to be no E. coli contamination on the romaine lettuce, and or whether it's grown in a lab, plant-based meat for those who want that, the cellular agriculture for those who want that. That, I mean, how long, when these big companies like Cargill, as an example, when they control so much of what most people are eating, people that aren't going to their farmer, which I completely agree with you on that you should know who's making your food. But people that'll get fast food or go to the grocery store to buy a package of meat or their pasteurized homogenized milk, which is a totally different substance than raw milk from a healthy cow, that they're going to get products that are coming from these big multinational groups. So do they know what it is? We don't.
Yeah, if you think that Cargill or Tyson or any of these massive sort of meat producers really care, because they go through they put a lot of emphasis on their packaging and labeling. Like you buy like I don't know one of the Burnaby I think is one of the major chicken egg manufacturers, and it's like they put the free roam. It's like
Free roam in
yeah,
their
a
hut.
little drawing of chickens and they're out in the sunshine and there's trees and it's nothing like that. I mean, if you look at one of these chicken or pig farms,
Oh yeah.
it's awful. Though I mean, there's no life for the. I mean, it is just awful the conditions that these animals are in. So like if they feel that way about the animals that they're producing, then what makes you think they think any differently of the people that are purchasing these their food products, sort of thing,
I
right?
was just gonna say that. Yeah, exactly. Have you ever been to the state of Delaware? I've been to Delaware and seen the chicken farms and the chicken trucks that drive down the street. The smell that goes by of these chickens that are just crammed into cages.
Oh yeah. Think about it. Think about it.
It's
A
bad.
pig is smarter than a dog. Like the that is scientifically proven. Like pigs are slightly more intelligent than dogs. Does anybody care about how pigs are being shipped around in the summertime in
No.
these trucks? You know, there's hundreds of them crammed in there, and it's hot as you could imagine. I mean, people are so concerned about the dogs and wanting to break windows to get in, and nobody gives a crap about these highly sentient, highly intelligent animals that are, you know, I mean, the closest that people get to them is you know, having bacon or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary because I have never like I do like I've really cut down on how much meat I eat. I still buy eggs, and we're all subject to, you know, the economy, sort of thing. So we all have to fit. We all have to budget. We all have to, you know, like save money and stuff like that. And that's one of the ways that you go to the supermarket and it just, you know, if something's on sale, people go crazy. It disturbs me, for instance, Camille, when I in the fall, especially, or the late summer, fall, when the corn really starts to appear in all the supermarkets here. It disturbs me because I look and I see, United States corn, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna touch it. And
No.
I just see like a frenzy of people every time. It's like they're just, because it's like 12 cobs for $3 or something, right? Like that, right? And you can understand because, you know, it's expensive. Food is expensive. It's difficult for a lot of people to make ends meet. So people see that and they're like, well, that's a no-brainer, but they're not thinking, well, this is genetically modified corn. And you know, and another thing too, like one of the things that really disturbs me are the California strawberries,
Oh, yeah.
which is like, they're frozen, and then they're, you know, I mean, like, what? You can't do that with strawberry, you know. Like, that doesn't work. You know, a real strawberry is quite sensitive to a lot of these things. So like I look and I see throughout the year, 12 months out of the year, these California strawberries are almost the first thing when you walk into a supermarket. They're almost like one of the first produces that you'll ever see, like here in Montreal. They're just there, and people, and they're always affordable. They're always, you know, people are always stocking up on them, sort of thing. And like I avoid them completely. I buy you know, the local farm grown strawberries that look like strawberries, right? They don't look like something that's grown on a different planet, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, like the economics of food. That's one of the ways that they can control people, because and that extends to the fast food industry as well. Because like people, I'm sure a lot of people know that. I mean, you have to be really stupid not to know that, you know, fast food is really bad for you. But it's also a lot cheaper than good food. And everywhere you go, and I mention this all the time, like one of the big corridors, the biggest corridor here in Canada is Montreal to Toronto. You stop at any Tom, Dick, and Harry, like anywhere you can, like, it's about a 5 hour drive, but anywhere that you pull off, any exit, it's the same thing. Like every exit is the same. There's a McDonald's, there's a Burger King, there's a Wendy's, there's a Subway. It's really disturbing, and it's like sad. It's like there is no real choice. There's the illusion of choice. Well, what's the choice? It's bad food or worse food,
Well,
right?
and we're conditioned to look at those foods and say that that's cheaper because we're just looking at that price tag right then and there. But obviously, the impact to our health and to the planet and those creatures and all the different things, the fuel involved in shipping, it's not a dollar menu item. You know, we're people buy that, and that's the only price that they see. If we could look at how much things actually cost, not dollars, but how much they cost, that stuff's pretty dang expensive. Whereas I'm a big fan of, number one, eating seasonally. I like to buy local. I'm right. I like oranges in the winter time when they're in season, but they don't grow around where I am. And so I order directly from a farmer in Texas that grows oranges organically. And I just get a case of oranges. And what's great, and I put them in the fridge and enjoy them while I have them. What I like about eating seasonally is each season, it's like the strawberries, for example, they're like a treat. It's
Yeah.
all year round then, and you can get a bunch and you can work your butt off and freeze them and have them until they last. And then you're like, oh, I can't wait for strawberry season again.
Yeah, well, it's good. It's cool that you mentioned that because at this time of year, I have pomegranate every day on my breakfast
Oh,
because it's in season, right? And it's most of it's coming from North Africa and places like that. So and it's like I say this to folks all the time. It's like I often give the analogy like you don't have you have cotton candy when you go to the fair. I mean that's the time to have that awful sort of fake food if you're going to have it sort of thing. But like yeah, take advantage like you know pumpkin pie. You don't have pumpkin pie in February. You have it in when in October when pumpkin season is and stuff like that. And that's a much more intelligent sort of way to live, and it makes you appreciate it. Also, one of my theories too is never just eat the same thing all the time. Like have a rotational sort of menu so that like if you get into a certain type of food for a month or two, maybe the next month or two you switch it up and you get into something else, and so that you don't constantly eat the same thing all the time and you try to change up your things, but just going seasonally and then supporting the organic and local farmers is a really intelligent sort of way to eat. And also, we eat too much. I mean, almost everybody in North America, we all have the luxury, I guess you could say, of eating more than we need to. And it's you see with obesity, you see with how like a third of the population is not just overweight, they're obese. So it's a definite horrible negative thing. Less is often more, right? Like it would be better rather than cracking open that Planters salted peanut can and eating the whole thing. It might be better just take a handful of almonds, right? Like like and maybe a nectarine or something to wash it down or whatever. Like just be more frugal in what you consume and think when you're eating. Think when you're eating because like you can like the way that I kind of do it is like I do have some junk foods, like I'll have some sugary foods and stuff like that. But like I'll never ever drink soft drinks, like never. Like there's no point in me drinking a soft drink. There's nothing but toxicity for me. That's the way I see it in a soft drink. So if I'm gonna have a soft drink, it might be once a year or something like that. At a party or whatever. Like why do you need those things? Like you need food, you need sustenance, you need to eat. So yes, we have to eat. We don't have to eat nearly as much as they lead us to believe, or they kind of, and you could say like the American, like they often compare the average portion size, say, of American meal, like a Texan sort of meal, as opposed to say a Parisian sort of meal or something like that. And like Europeans typically eat much smaller portions, Americans typically eat large portions. And the sort of American sort of way is like more is better sort of thing. But more often than not, less is more. So if like it's like eating less fast food, well, maybe if you only eat fast food once a month, it probably have no impact on you or very little. But if you eat it every day or you eat it 3 or 4 times a week, it's definitely going to impact you and it's not going to be positive. So
well,
just yeah, go
not
ahead.
not to excuse people's gorging themselves on food, but I think a lot of the people, at least in the United States, there's also they're starving. They're starving for nutrients. The food is so empty and unusable. You
The
can't, that
the
they're begging for
the
more.
high fructose corn sugar,
Yeah,
it actually makes people hungry. It's like
yeah.
you consume it. It's the trick. It's a real. I mean, you gotta give them credit, I guess. But like I've seen it myself, where I've been around people that just eat the sugars and cookies, and then they just stay hungry. Like they want more food. Like eat the act of eating and drinking the cokes and the cookies and the cakes and stuff like that makes you hungrier. Like you're not getting the nutrients. Your body's saying eat more. I'm not getting what I need, eat more. And then and that's the one of the big tricks I think they play. And one of the really nasty things that is going on, which really goes to show you how evil some of these corporations are, is how they're normalizing obesity and saying, it's society to blame for, judging people that are obese and giving it a negative stigma, and that these people should be embraced and it's the new normal and shit like that, when it's not. It's toxic. It's awful. It's terrible. It's a sick state to be in. There's nobody that should be promoting that type of lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, it's all such a mess. And the food's been taken over. It's lacking in nutrients. We've got things like the California tying up with Israel, who they love tinkering with the food to make it grow in salt water or whatever they want to do to engineer it. So you've got people gorging themselves, they're starving, there's all this produce available, you want all the vegetables and the fruit when you walk into the grocery store all year round, and that's because it all comes from places like California. And people are hearing you got to eat the whole food plant-based diets to be healthy, so they're eating all of this stuff, and then I don't see how you can get any better. I don't see how we can get better when that's the when that's how can you be better when you're eating food that's lacking, where everything's lacking. That's why not a big fan of things like vertical farming and the not aquaculture so much, but when they're growing the plants and the fish water and everything, because I don't think that contains what that food should contain. There's life in the soil that's kind of important, or at least usually.
The sunshine, the soil, good old Mother Nature.
Yeah, they can't replace that sunshine with stacked LEDs, but that's what they want to do. And they're calling that local farming because communities can have their own, turn your own warehouse. It doesn't matter if the soil was contaminated. Turn this warehouse into vertical farming and feed your neighborhood, feed your town. And it's crazy. It's
Well,
crazy.
yeah, like one of the things that, okay, so with Agenda 2030, they are saying, and it looks good on the surface because it's like community gardens, right? Oh, it's good. People are out there, they're on their hands and knees, they're planting, they're growing, they're getting a green thumb. But really, I mean, the average person in a city can't grow very much food, not nearly enough to sustain themselves or their family. So it's really just, I'm not saying, like, I'm sure there are exceptions, but I think for the average person, that's not how it's going to work. You need a bit of land, you need the resources, you need the water, you need, but this is where the whole Agenda 2030 comes in, because they want to move everybody into these mega cities, and things like hobby farms are being banned in Europe and even in Canada. Like, for instance, here in Montreal, we're not even allowed to have a fireplace, for instance. Like, you can't have chicken coops. You can't, so like they take away the ability, even though almost ideally, I would say for the average person would be to get themselves off the grid and produce as much as they can with their own energy, with their own land, sort of thing. Produce, like, I ultimately hope to be able to produce all my produce, sort of thing. Like, eventually, that's what I would, or at least, a large percentage of it, and then the rest get from a local sort of organic farmers that you could barter and trade with, sort of thing. And I think that using the tech that is available and that will be available in the future will make these things much more obtainable for the average person. And so, you could look at it that way and say, hey, the tech, this is going to allow us this opportunity. But that's not what they want. They don't want millions and millions of people living off their grid, making all their own food, and completely cutting out their corporations and their corporatocracy, sort of thing. They want everybody to be using their their seeds. If they're going to plant, they want people to buy as much of their own produce as possible, and to be completely dependent upon the New World Order, essentially. And this is why I say to folks, like, one of the answers to what's going on is to take control, and to, like, whether, and like, this extends not just to food, but it extends to entertainment and stuff like that. It's like, well, their entertainment and all that, it's toxic. It's like their food. It's not good for you. It's not beneficial. It's actually really bad for you. And if you consume a lot of it, it'll really fuck you up. It's better that you step away from that, and produce your own entertainment, produce your own, support your own sort of local sort of communities and stuff like that. And then you'll have a much more beneficial and much more pure, organic sort of entertainment, if you will. So, like, I think that applies to so many different things, and this is the opposite of what they're trying to do. With all their green and all their sustainable stuff, it ultimately is communism. All of us living in massive cities and completely dependent upon their rations and whatever, their prices and their rations and whatever else they have planned for us, sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and I know another thing for people to watch when they're setting up their, what if they are doing maybe a vertical farm or whatever they're doing in their community to feed their local community, is when there's grants offered and different monies being invested. Because I know that impact investing is a huge thing, these, like the Ford Foundation and things like that. They're looking to invest in these things, the feel good things. And then what happens when they get their tentacles in there? It's, if they've given you so much money, you might have to listen to them on some things. And so, well, these are the seeds. We can get you a really good deal on these seeds. But yeah,
Yeah, it ultimately, it's just they want to control it all.
yes.
And that's the ultimate conflict that we all face. It's like, you're either going to be completely dependent upon them, their system, their seeds, their animals, their foods, right? Their rations, or you're going to take control and you know have some sort of sovereignty on the most important thing, which is what you eat. I mean, when we talk about, you know having a healthy lifestyle, I think that's what everybody, I mean, if you have your health, the world is open. There's so many things you can do. If you don't have your health, well, and this is what we see when we talk about obesity, these people do not have their health. So the majority, well, we say 3% or whatever the numbers are, it's staggering, of a percentage of the people, a third of the people right now in North America do not have health. Like, they have bad health, and bad health automatically, it translates to bad sort of mental health. You can't have both. It's impossible, really. If one of them's gone, then the other is going to be gone, sort of thing. And really, if you are of a healthy body, well, then there's a really strong chance you're going to be a healthy mind, sort of thing. And this is not getting better; it's getting worse. And
Let's talk about how much worse it's getting before we run out of time. I've got something
yeah, absolutely.
for you specifically up there in Canada. Because this food takeover, the tech takeover, the Beyond Meats, that these things being sold as the greener way to go, and they're going to save the world, global warming, all the things, which that's another topic we'll talk about that another day. But did you know that your government invested $153 million for Beyond Burger? Because they're just flying out of A&Ws. I went on to different YouTube channels. I searched Beyond Meat reviews, and I was watching these videos of people going into places like A&W, and they're getting the burger and they're eating it and they're telling you how great it is. I was leaving comments on some of these videos, letting them know that they need to know what they're what they're looking or what they're eating, and I was linking them to my video. But I checked when I wasn't logged into my account, and none of the comments were showing up. They did show up in two places. I left some comments from another account saying check your spam filter.
Yeah, I gave up a long time ago.
Yeah, you can't reach anybody, but
If you bring your cursor up to the top there.
Okay.
All right. Just, I mean, pull the article down to the top. Look at that. Live kindly and the plant, like the symbol, right? It's just it's more of their just their sort of mind control, right? They're programming people. Isn't this great? Oh, the Canadian government is promoting veganism. Oh, this is awesome. You know, A&W. The reality is nobody should be eating this shit. I mean, like the way I see it, I honestly believe 100% that the fast food is a cancer on society. So when I see fast food, I see cancer. That's what I see. I see like this is what society needs to eliminate. Or it's not, and I'm not anti-capitalist in the sense that I would say, you know, you got to have communist sort of dictatorship and just say these are no longer allowed. No, but if the government really cared, if the Canadian government really cared about people and their health, there's no way in hell they would be putting money into these fast food corporations. I mean, it's lunacy. It makes no sense whatsoever. And yeah, I mean it's crazy because and we used to have we mentioned it before, but like when I was a kid growing up, and you know you'd have these things like participation, which is here in Canada, where you'd have like in the afternoon television, you'd have these 10-15 minute sort of segments that would come on in which you'd have these, you know, these young adults that were healthy and they would do all these exercises and they would say, come on, Canada, get active, get fit, you know. So the government, arguably you could say back then, was actually trying to promote healthier lifestyles. Well, that's all gone. That is no longer anywhere. You're not going to see that type of stuff now. You know, it's more likely that you're going to have Canadian governments investing money into fast food joints and stuff like that, which
And if you look at the ingredients list on this Beyond Meat burger, they're terrible. They're processed food. Super processed food is the new health food, according to this stuff. It's terrible.
and people are, you know, people are dumb. They see, you know, like the imagery, like I'd say Agenda 2030, Agenda 21 sort of imagery, which is often green and it's got plants and it, you know, it looks like it's healthy, it's sustainable, you know. So like the people see that and they're like, oh, you know, maybe we should eat the healthier choice, maybe we should, you know, and they've been programmed into that mentality. Well, the reality is it's not any healthier. It's maybe arguably even worse because, you know, it's genetically modified and God knows what else they're putting in there. And the reality is you should not be going into these restaurants, period. I wouldn't have a problem if there was one McDonald's in a major 2 million, 3 million size city or something like that. Then I'd be like, oh yeah, well, remember that place McDonald's? Yeah, I went there a few years ago. Oh yeah. But you got McDonald's everywhere. I mean, I could literally step outside my front door and throw a baseball and probably hit a McDonald's. They're just a cancer. They're just everywhere. And it's like that is a total mirror, a reflection of the corporatocracy that runs this planet, that they have poisoned us to such an extent that this is the industry, this is the economy. The economy is food that kills, food that is extremely harmful. And guess what? On top of it all, it is entirely focused on children and programming and addicting children. That's why I say I have no qualms whatsoever in saying McDonald's is extremely evil. And I have done dozens of videos over the past. Well, I haven't done any recently, but in the past, I had all kinds of videos ripping into McDonald's and all the fast food giants for how they try to get kids as early as possible. They want them as toddlers, they want them as young as possible, and they want to addict them to this lifestyle, which is, well, let's just go to McDonald's. It's like that should not be normal at all. That is, you know, that is extremely dire sort of reflection of how far we've gone away from our food. Like we literally have lost the ball when it comes to what we put in our bodies.
And I know back when I was in school, cafeteria food was
Mhm.
easily as bad as fast food.
Yeah.
And some of these companies that are doing this new meat, like the cellular agriculture people, the what's yeah, the lab grown, the stem cell meat, they are looking their first products, which the one company just, they say that by the end of this year, while it won't be on store shelves by the end of this year in other markets, not the United States, they intend to have their first stem cell meat on the market. And it's likely to take the shape of processed food like chicken nuggets or hot dogs or bacon, things that don't have to look like
Yeah.
regular meat. And that once that's on the market, once that's allowed here, I mean, what's the next? I mean, how quick does that jump into the school system? Because Just is already in, it's like 3,600 or some crazy amount of K to 12 public schools. Their products are already there. This product line, Just, they are sold at my local food co op, and people are happy. People are happy it's there. It's an alternative. And I'm telling them it's biotechnology. They should make some major waves in the co-op system. There's a whole group, the co-ops all work together. And I went to board meetings, I went to the annual meeting, and I told them if they would stand up against this, maybe it would make a difference. They could tell the other co-ops, but they are not doing anything about it. So, well, not yet. I haven't lost hope. But but if this food just, will they automatically get the stem cell meat in there because they already sell their mayonnaise? It will. They got their egg scramble not long ago, and they're
Yeah.
their mung bean based egg scramble. But what's funny about my co-op and this fake meat, the Beyond Burgers, one person there, I caught her right before she was purchasing a pack of them because they were on sale. They're always on sale. For a while, they were unable to be purchased. They were out of stock from the distributor, and they were telling me, oh, because Amazon and Whole Foods and they've got the buying power. But then they came back and they've been on sale pretty solid. And one person, when I caught her, I said, no, this, it was right after I had a private meeting with a couple board members. And I said, no, this is why I was here today. Don't buy these burgers. And I was explaining it to her. She, well, they're on sale and I'm going to get them. I'm going to try them. So she did. And you know what her response was after she tried them? That they tasted and smelled like cat food. And
Oh,
she's a cashier there, and she had people come through the line and they asked her about these Beyond Burgers because the guy's friend was buying them. And she said the cat food comment, and he said, that's what I said. And I found a review video on YouTube where they're saying, okay, some people say they taste like cat food or smell like cat food.
isn't that interesting? Have you ever seen the sci-fi movie that came out of South Africa? Um, boy, oh boy, if I could only remember the name of it. It was a pretty big movie. District 15, I think it was called.
No.
It might have been District 13. And it's about aliens that come to Earth, and they're basically they become refugees in South Africa. I think it's Cape Town. I don't know if it's Johannesburg or whatever, but somewhere in South Africa, their ship kind of breaks down, and they want to eat cat food. So, like, I mean, like, or that's the food.
Really?
Yeah, they're given cat food as rations, and they're treated really badly because they're seen as filthy sort of immigrants. It's all New World Order programming, but I found that interesting that it tastes because that is one of the things out of the movie. It was a very popular movie. I believe the director is of a certain tribe, and he went on to direct some very big movies. That was one of the movies that really got him on the map. But you see a lot of this stuff um, repeat itself. So when you said taste like cat food, that's immediately what I thought. I was like, oh my gosh, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It,
Oh my
it,
word.
it's scary. You know, I don't know. Have you ever seen Soylent Green?
No, I haven't. I've seen clips of it. I get Soylent Green as people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, you really wanna watch that one at some point. It's pretty crazy, but yeah, the basic thing is that, it actually supposedly, if I'm not mistaken, Soylent Green kinda takes place in 2020,
Oh,
if I'm
really?
not mistaken, yeah, so and it's like the world is massively overpopulated and people are, everyone's surviving off rations, and the only food that's available is called Soylent Green, and it's just and there's another movie that came out too that, kind of is similar. It's called, Snowpiercer, in which it's like a post sort of geoengineered world in which it's eternal winter, and there's all of humanity is on this massive train that circumnavigates the globe, sort of thing, and it's all a class system. But it turns out that the people are eating this gelatin, this black gelatin stuff, and it turns out it's all insects that are being melted down and put into these bars and stuff like that. And then you see in New York City and even here in Montreal, a lot of these restaurants are starting to pop up. So there's a lot of I've covered this a lot in the past. The Agenda 21 sort of insect programming where they're conditioning people into eating insects.
Oh yeah, chirp chips. Have you seen those?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's pizzerias that have like, you can get pizza with grasshoppers and stuff on them, and then they get all kinds of celebrities to try them, and oh, it's pretty good actually. And I'm not against the idea of eating insects because there's a lot of protein, a lot of I mean, it's part of the ecosystem, and
But
places
what
like
are they
Africa,
eating?
it's part of their diet. But like what what else are they doing, and like why are they programming us with this? Well, they're massively altering our food and they want us to go along with it. So if they're going to tell everyone, you're going to eat beetle burgers and stuff like that, well, people will eat them because they've been programmed into it, sort of thing. So it's
And what
pretty
are the bugs eating? Because you are what you eat too.
exactly. What are the cows eating? What's in your milk? Why are you drinking? Like, I try to cut down on how much milk I consume, and I have a weakness for ice cream, so I try to get the all natural kind, the best, with the least amount of preservatives and stuff in them. But nonetheless, why are we drinking milk every day? Where did this come from? Well, it's like I don't know if you know the story about bacon and eggs.
Yeah, I saw that Corbett did a video once, right? On that.
Yeah, yeah, on Edward Bernays, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, they can, you know, they like, and it's very interesting because this is all, like, when it comes to mind control. That's why I say television is 100% mind control, and unless it's just a camera and it's pointing at a mountain and it's capturing, a stream or some animals. Your television is mind control. They can make you think and act and buy and live and talk and everything. They like you're under their and the average person has no concept of how powerful that programming is. So Edward Bernays understood this acutely, and many years back came up with or made these demonstrations on how you could program people easily into doing exactly what you want them to do, using television, using the radio, using the media, basically newspapers and stuff like magazines. And the recent show that is total New World Order programming as well is called Mad Men,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I intend to do a whole breakdown one of these days because it also is all dealing with the feminist, third wave and pushing that type of stuff. But yeah, Mad Men is a good sort of look into the early sort of marketing for Madison Avenue and how they were able to program people, because ads have changed a lot over the past 40, or let's say past 60, 70 years, where like usually you just had a product and you had a logo and little jingle, tastes good, tastes like grandma's or something like that, right? Just the basic sort of thing. Well, now ads in the late 1950s, early 1960s started to incorporate sexual imagery, subconscious sort of sexual imagery, especially in women's products and stuff like that. and then colors and all these different things in order to, get you to pay attention and to buy the product, sort of thing. So much of what we have now is just people that are completely under heavy mind control and have no idea. They believe that they have complete free will, but they do not at all. They are governed by what they are programmed with to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this extends into everything that they do. Like, they don't realize that, well, your politics, the way that your politics are, what you believe in, what you fight for, that's all part of your conditioning. So, like, if you're pro-immigration, for instance, well, that's because you grew up watching the Hollywood movies and Oprah Winfrey and everything else. You didn't realize all that time that they were programming your mind into what they wanted to program you into, which is ultimately just idiocy and compliance into what they're trying to achieve, sort of thing. So
Oh
it's
yeah. For over a decade, I knew enough to eat organically. Like that was as much as I knew. But I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, our television broke and I refused to replace it. And when we had it, oh, it was nothing to watch a couple shows a night. And I tell you, when it may sound silly, but when the TV broke, it was as though my brain turned on. And that's really when I went just diving into all of these things that were immediately impacting my world, like the food issue.
there,
That
there I gotta tell you this. There's an incredible. I've shown this before, and I should just make a video on it because it's an astonishing example of how strong the programming has become. The Simpsons, right? You've seen The Simpsons before?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you might recall this episode. There was an episode probably in the 90s before everyone was hooked up to the internet and completely under 24/7 mind control, in which the power goes out and it's like a snow day sort of thing.
Okay.
And Bart Simpson, because I think it's because he did poorly in school, had to stay in and write this report, and he was looking out the window, and it was like a magical wonderland. Like, everybody, all the Simpsons characters were outside throwing snowballs, building snow forts, tobogganing, singing. It's just, even Mr. Burns was out there. Like, everybody was in the fun, and Bart was just he's stuck inside and he's just absolutely miserable. And it's like the most perfect day ever, because instead of being in the institution, instead of being in the home watching the television, everyone is outside and everyone's having fun. So fast forward maybe 10, 15 years into a more recent episode of The Simpsons, and a similar thing happens where the power goes out and Bart Simpson is sitting in front of his computer or his gaming console or whatever, and he keeps trying to put the button on over and over again, like, just like a machine, like, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. And then he starts rubbing I think a balloon up against his head to get some static electricity. And like, it's the complete opposite. Nobody is outside, nobody's doing anything, and it's like, you think about how much we've changed or how much they've changed us, where it used to be in the past. Yes, yeah, and it could still potentially be that the power goes off and you can't access your mind control, and then all of a sudden, what do? Well, you start lighting candles, maybe you pull out the board game, you got your family, your friends, you're having some tea or something. All of a sudden, you're having conversation. All of a sudden, you're doing human things, and you're like, "Wow, this is kinda nice." Granted, it's not, like, super cold or whatever, and you're not freezing. Um, and then you realize, well, wait a second, why do I need the electricity? Why do I need why you need electricity? Well, maybe not necessarily, but, I mean, most of us depend on electricity, but we are so conditioned into this new world order and the lifestyles that they promote, which are toxic beyond belief, including obesity and the LGBT and all that crap, that we have lost our humanity, that we don't even know how to be human anymore, to each other. and that we are paralyzed when they take away the system. Like I've seen people, like I watch people sometimes in the metros and on the trains, and they can't function without a device in front of them. They don't know what to do. It's like they keep looking at their phone. They keep expecting something. Like they're just such incredible control. And if you showed an animal and you showed an animal in the lab and you said, look at this animal, like it keeps going to the television, it keeps putting on the computer, it keeps going to the video game console, and look at it and look at its face. Does it look like it's happy? Does it look like it's satisfied? It keeps doing the same thing over and over again. um well, most people would be like, whoa, that poor thing, it's suffering, this is awful. But this is the average person. The average person is this is what they are, this is what they've turned people into, and
Yeah.
it's scary. So it's such a positive thing, and this is where we have to realize, like, wait a second, maybe it's better not to have the, like, when I think about families sitting around a television, it just, even as a kid growing up, I could never understand it because I wasn't one of these kids that ever watched television. I was always out playing sports and doing boy things and shit. And whenever I would be at a place or a family that would sit around and put on the television during dinner, I'd just be like, "What the hell is going on? This is like the Twilight Zone. Like, you guys actually do this every night? Everybody stops talking and everybody's looking at the screen while they're eating." Well, now it's the commercials alone. Like I've seen commercials like for McCain's Pizza and stuff like that, to give an example, where the mother has made the meal. Well, how does she made the meal? Well, she opened the box, she put the frozen pizza in the oven, and 20 minutes later, pizza's ready. But the problem is she can't get a hold of any of the family because they're all on their devices. But no, she's got this messaging through her tech that she could send the message, and then the next thing is they're all at the table with their devices, eating their pizza, basically.
That's all so convenient.
It's it's just really disturbing how altered humanity has become. And this is where, all this comes together, the CRISPR human beings, I mean, the cloning, everything, it is a very, very crazy sort of, um, it's almost unforeseeable. It really is. I mean, you can get into science fiction. Some writers will be a little bit more in tune with where things are going and be able to maybe chart out a trajectory. But I think most people, I think most of us would be hard pressed to see where the world's going to be in like 40, 50 years from now. How different humanity will be, and it's scary.
Well, and I don't have much longer today that I can talk, but I'd love to show you a couple creepy things that talk, some videos of the people that are making this food, if we want to call it that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see if it'll play, right? It didn't. All right, so this people, YouTube, I know it's evil as far as getting messages out, although we are on right now, but there's so much on YouTube. I've been thinking of making a list of just what I watch on there, because they're telling you all these things they're doing. This one is from IndieBio, which is a place that helps startups. It's this big intensive thing for making medicines and foods and the fake leathers and everything. But this company, Notco, South America, I'm pretty sure, but he's going to explain the machine learning software, how they can take the molecular equivalent of one animal protein and make it out of plants. So let's see if it works.
So if we already love the food that we're eating, let's not change it. Let's change the way we make the food that we love to eat. With this concept, we develop a technology. First, we take an animal-based protein food such as milk. We deconstruct it molecularly, so we have a molecular formulation that describes milk taste, texture, smell, and color. We do the same with plant-based ingredients. And then we've developed a machine learning algorithm called Giuseppe that is helping us predict which combination of plant-based ingredients should result in the same molecular structure as the animal-based protein food, such as milk.
And You could hear
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
And they are working and licensing their discoveries and their technology. They're licensing that to the biggest food manufacturers in the world. So nobody has to reinvent that wheel, right? And then this guy here, Josh Tetrick, he's pretty funny. This is Just Foods, and they used to be Hampton Creek, and then there was some kind of scandal. They were accused of buying out all of the stock on the shelves in some stores of their products to artificially inflate the sales. And someone says they busted them on that. And they completely reorganized, got a new board of directors, and they got a new name, and they named themselves Just. And he's talking in Hong Kong here about how they want to work with the biggest manufacturers and make it easier for them to be able to use to get their products. I think I have it queued up at the right spot. Let's see.
And we imagine a world, let's say I'm talking to the biggest food companies in the world. David, you're Nestle, and Roger, you're General Mills, and Steph back to your Kraft Heinz, and you're trying to figure out how you can get involved in this. I want to build a platform where, let's say you want to make a dairy product, you click on it, you say that I'm interested in the following product requirements. I want a certain kind of viscosity. I want a certain kind of mouthfeel. I want a certain kind of creaminess. I'm really interested in the following nutritional requirements in terms of micronutrients or protein. Those are my cost requirements. I'm really interested in actually sourcing it from East Asia for whatever reason. And the tools that we've identified pop up. And again, tools just mean plants. Tools is just a fancier word to say plants that farmers are growing around the world. It's not any more complicated than that. And then we make it a little bit easier for you, Nestle and General Mills and Kraft. Here's a butter product, again, that uses less land and less water. And our goal is to build this out to make it easier for good people to do the right thing, because it shouldn't be hard to make this kind of green innovation that we want happen.
He goes on to talk about their farms that they want to replace the big pork manufacturers and all the meat manufacturers, but how much less land, how much less water, it'll just be so much greener and so much better.
Oh yeah, green ovation.
Yeah.
Have you seen too the blockchain, which is really disturbing, where IBM is talking about putting these microchips in tomatoes and stuff like that, so that you can trace where the food is grown. I mean, it's very, very crazy.
With nanotechnology, I mean, how small they could make those systems, and they have. I've seen where they speak of nanotechnology coatings to make your produce spoil slower. And man, nanotechnology, that's a whole animal. Like they have developed nano vaccines. They say that instead of having to pick each fish out of your fish farm and inject it, no, they put it in the water and they dip them. I mean, so
yeah, I know. It's like stop the ride.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do any of these people really understand? Like, I mean, they might understand some of what they're involved in, but do they understand all that's happening? I mean, are they, and it's like it's always sold as, we're going to produce more food, we're going to produce it cheaper, we're going to produce it using less energy, less resources, less land, less water. It's all win, 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 right? But really, is it really food? And at the end of the day, what is the impact that these products are going to have on humans when you have nanotechnology in your tomatoes, for instance? And it's really disturbing when you think about it, because like tomatoes is one of their big GMO sort of cash crops that they have really focused on. I think tomato itself. And apples as well, like you just wonder what you're biting into if you're getting one of these things now. Where what has been done to it? How much has it changed? And what are the impacts that it's going to have on the consumer? And most importantly, too, very important to always point out to folks listening is that with children, it's their cells are forming. So most of us being adults, we've already had our cells form. When your cells are developing, this is when these food products could really wreak havoc on your system. And like all the different chemicals, all the different things that are going into them, we have no idea what the long-term impact, because we're human guinea pigs. We're all being experimented on massively. And they're
I
just gonna
have, oh, sorry. I have suspicions that some of them might know what the end goal is here. I know I've already mentioned this to you, but in particular, the one documentary that was a big impact in the world of some people in my family that made them go vegan was that Forks Over Knives movie, which I just recently rewatched. And it was just anti-fast food, really, but they make that huge leap, just like these people at Just and Notco make this leap that factory farming is awful and evil and look what it's doing. And it is. Who's going to question that? Factory farming is not the way to go. But instead of stop going to where animals are working with the land and working with the people, like Joel Salatin at Polyface Farms is a wonderful example. But just instead of going there, they jump to the lab. They go right to the laboratory and how high tech. But the guy from Forks Over Knives, I have to point out to people that Caldwell Esselstyn is one of the stars. He graduated from Yale University, where he was a member of Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
It's something to think about, you know.
The Skull and Bones, and think about how many former Skull and Bones people are in Monsanto, currently now Bayer. I mean, it's pretty scary stuff. And isn't it interesting that the presidents, at least I think since maybe not Clinton, but George W. Bush, have all had non-genetically modified organic foods in the White House. So like that's just an example of how the elites are not eating the foods that we're eating. And it's scary to think about, because you think, well, everyone's eating this stuff. And part of what you see, like when you watch CNN or you watch these daytime, Good Morning America and stuff like that, product placement, well, it's not only just product placement, it's also like, this is perfectly kosher, this is really good for you, go ahead and eat these foods, go ahead and buy these products. They're, so in many ways, they're being so disingenuous with us over and over again with the foods that we're, and ultimately too, I mean, as I said, I mean, being an adult and having fully formed cells and stuff like that, yeah, this stuff could cause cancers, it cause a lot of different things. But think of the children, and think of what the impact of having the synthetic, genetically modified, foods is going to have on their development. And that's where it really gets scary. So, it's man, it's not, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, and food has always been one of the ways. It's pretty disturbing if you see the United Nations Plandopolis cartoons, which depict the mega cities of Agenda 2030 and the rations, and that you'll have these World Food Councils and stuff that will ration out the foods to the humans, and oh, you'll have enough credits this month to be able to get some meat. Well, what kind of meat is that going to be in the year 2030? It's probably not going to be, Uncle Bob's farm or something, right? And the pig that you grew up kind of knowing. It's going to be something radically different. And yeah, it's pretty scary.
It is scary. I have so much more that I'd like to talk to you about, but I have to go.
Okay. It's too bad we ticked off a bit late.
I know. I'm sorry.
We could do this again, for sure.
I'd love to do this again on so many other topics too. So, but definitely, I still have things sitting here around me that I wanted to mention about food for sure, but I do have to go. So,
okay.
But thank you for being on. And I hope that if there's any way that anyone who's actually listening to this doesn't already know who you are, people need to go to your channels. I mean, you you are doing such important work. And I know I've mentioned my nephew to you before, that I've sent him your information, and I hope that I tell him, tell your friends, tell your friends, this, especially the outreach to the youth on your Supreme Lord Commander channel is just, I mean, people don't recognize how they're being manipulated. You can't see it while you're in there. I mean, I'll be the first to say that, oh boy, was I suffering from mind control. And I feel like I'm shedding layers all the time as I'm looking at what I just doesn't add up. Like, I like to question everything, including what I'm thinking. So if I'm watching something that sounds good, I'm going to go look at the people that are saying it and see why they might be saying it. And I really appreciate you look at stuff that I wouldn't necessarily look at, but people that I know and love do. And so really, people, check out Supreme Lord Commander, check out Jeff Censored, and then you're not doing much on Jeff Censored Live while you have Jeff Censored.
It's been hit, so I can't go live.
Yeah, that's right.
The 3 channels, so Jeff Censored Live, and Supreme Lord Commander, all have strikes. So that's why I haven't been able to do live shows or host the Patreon show or the Jeff C and Friends, which really sucks.
Yeah,
But that's why I'm called Jeff Censored. And yeah, just one final thing I'll say about that is that I am trying to approach it with a more sympathetic sort of tone, and realize that, yes, just like you mentioned before, I've been under this programming and still am under some of the programming. I mean, it's hard not to, and we all have to realize that it requires you have to be sympathetic to other people that are heavily conditioned, and understand that chances are they're brought up by their media and their bad parenting and stuff, and that's all part of how they've engineered us to this point. So to break that sort of New World Order engineering, that programming is very difficult. It's a challenge for everyone, including myself, and I'm sure you, to this day. And it's not everything that's going on is bad. Not everything is evil. But we should all endeavor to have critical thought so that we can at least for ourselves make wiser decisions.
yes. And as I've told people who I've shared your work with, and I'll put the links to your channel below in the description, but I've told people, go through your playlists and pick the thing that looks the most like enraging. What would make you so angry to have someone question your paradigm? Go for that one, because you're speaking sense, and people need to question things. We can't just blindly go on and think that nobody's out to get us, because we're definitely, we are under attack.
We're in the crosshairs.
Well, thank you for being on with me today, Jeff. And I'm going to talk to you again very soon, I hope.
Absolutely. This is
All right.
my pleasure. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.